The afternoon sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting golden patterns across the marble floors. Sophie Bennett sat on the cream-colored sofa, her phone pressed against her ear, trying desperately to keep her voice steady. Little Lily was curled up beside her, tiny fingers clutching the fabric of Sophie's cardigan. "Please, Nathan, just tell me what changed," Sophie whispered, her voice cracking despite her best efforts. The man she had loved for 4 years, the man she was supposed to marry in 6 days, had just told her everything was over. Nathan's voice on the other end was cold, distant. "I met someone else, Sophie. Someone who understands my ambitions better. I can't marry you when my heart belongs to her now." The words hit like physical blows. Sophie had spent months planning every detail of their wedding. The deposits were paid, the invitations sent, her dress hanging in the closet of the apartment they shared. 4 years of building a life together, erased in a single phone call. "But we have a life together," Sophie managed to say, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "We planned everything. How can you just throw it all away?" "I'm sorry," said Nathan, but there was no real remorse in his tone. "I have until Sunday to get your things from the apartment. My lawyer will handle the rest." The line went dead. Sophie stared at her phone, unable to process what had just happened. Lily, sensing something was wrong, wrapped her small arms around Sophie's neck and pressed her face against her shoulder. "Sophie sad?" the little girl asked in her sweet, innocent voice. Sophie pulled herself together enough to smile weakly at the child. "Just a little, sweetheart, but it will be okay." Except Sophie had no idea if it would be okay. In 6 days, she was supposed to be walking down an aisle. Now she had nowhere to live, a canceled wedding to explain to everyone she knew, and a gaping hole where her future used to be. "I'm so stupid," Sophie whispered to herself, fresh tears spilling over. "How did I not see this coming?" She had missed every sign. The late nights Nathan claimed were work meetings, the way he had grown distant over the past 2 months, the phone calls he took in another room, all of it suddenly made horrible sense. From somewhere in the penthouse, Sophie heard the sound of a door opening. Her heart jumped. Vincent Thornhill wasn't supposed to be home for another 3 hours. He never came home early from the office. Sophie frantically wiped at her tears, trying to compose herself. She was at work. She couldn't let her employer see her like this. But it was too late. Vincent appeared in the doorway of the living room, his tailored charcoal suit perfectly pressed, his dark hair styled immaculately. He was the picture of success and control. At 38, he had built a financial empire that made him one of the wealthiest men in the city. He was also one of the most private. In the 3 months Sophie had worked for him, they had barely spoken beyond the necessary exchanges about Lily's schedule and needs. He was polite but distant, always professional, never personal. But now, standing in the doorway with his briefcase in hand, Vincent's composed expression faltered as he took in the scene before him. Sophie's tear-stained face, red and puffy from crying, Lily clinging to her protectively. "I apologize," Vincent said, his deep voice quiet. "I didn't mean to interrupt. A meeting was canceled." Sophie stood quickly, setting Lily down gently. "No, I'm sorry, Mr. Thornhill. I shouldn't have taken a personal call during work hours. It won't happen again." She could feel her face burning with embarrassment. This was exactly the kind of unprofessional behavior that could get her fired, and right now, losing this job would be catastrophic. Vincent didn't move from the doorway. His dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made Sophie want to shrink into herself. "Has something serious happened?" Sophie opened her mouth to lie, to say everything was fine, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was too heavy, too raw. It spilled out before she could stop it. "My fiancé ended our engagement today. The wedding was supposed to be this Saturday. He met someone else." The silence that followed felt endless. Sophie couldn't bring herself to look at Vincent. She focused on Lily instead, smoothing down the little girl's dark curls, trying to find something to anchor herself to. When Vincent finally spoke, his voice had changed. It was softer, almost gentle. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" The question caught Sophie off guard. She looked up, confused. "What?" "The apartment," Vincent clarified, taking a few steps into the room. "Were you living together?" Sophie nodded slowly. "It's his apartment. Actually, it belongs to his father. Nathan said I have until Sunday to get my things out." As she said the words aloud, the full reality of her situation began to sink in. She didn't just lose her fiancé, she lost her home. She would need to find a new place to live, pack up 4 years of her life, and figure out how to afford a security deposit and first month's rent on her nanny salary. "I'll figure something out," Sophie said quickly, seeing the concern in Vincent's expression. "I have some savings. I can find a place." Lily tugged on Sophie's sleeve. "Want water?" the little girl announced. "I'll get it," Vincent said before Sophie could move. He walked to the kitchen, leaving Sophie standing uncertainly in the living room. He could hear him opening cabinets, filling a glass from the filtered water dispenser. When he returned, he handed the glass to Lily, who drank eagerly, water dribbling down her chin. "Thank you, Daddy," Lily said, handing the glass back.
The morning sun painted soft colors across the guest room walls when Sophie finally opened her eyes. For 3 beautiful seconds, she forgot everything. Then reality crashed back, and her chest tightened with a familiar ache of loss. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. 27 messages from Nathan now. Still, she refused to read them. What could he possibly say that would matter? The damage was done, the trust shattered beyond repair. Sophie forced herself out of bed and caught her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair a tangled mess. She still wore the same clothes from yesterday, wrinkled and uncomfortable. Everything she owned was still at Nathan's apartment, waiting to be packed up and taken away. The thought made her stomach turn. She would have to face him eventually, see the place where they had built their life together, now just another thing to dismantle. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Sophie?" Vincent's voice came through, careful and respectful. "Lily is asking for you, but take your time." "I'll be right there," Sophie called back, her voice hoarse from crying. She splashed water on her face in the bathroom, trying to make herself presentable. It was a losing battle, but she did her best. When she finally emerged from the guest room, the smell of fresh coffee and something sweet drew her toward the kitchen. Lily was sitting at the breakfast counter in her pink pajamas, swinging her legs and munching on a waffle. Vincent stood by the stove, dressed more casually than Sophie had ever seen him, in dark jeans and a simple navy sweater. He looked up when she entered. "Good morning," he said, his tone neutral but not unkind. "Coffee?" "Please," Sophie managed, sliding onto the stool next to Lily. The little girl immediately reached for her hand. "Sophie stay forever?" she asked, with the innocent hope only a 5-year-old could muster. Sophie's heart clenched. "I'm here right now, sweetheart. That's what matters." Vincent poured coffee into a white ceramic mug and set it in front of Sophie, along with cream and sugar. "I made waffles. You should eat something." Sophie wasn't hungry, but she nodded anyway. Vincent placed a plate in front of her, and they sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sound being Lily's cheerful chatter about the cartoon she wanted to watch later. "I need to get my things today," Sophie said, staring into our coffee. "From the apartment. I should probably go this morning before Nathan gets back from his morning run. He always runs on Saturdays." Vincent set down his fork. "I'll drive you." "You don't have to do that." "I know," Vincent said simply, "but you'll need help carrying boxes, and you shouldn't have to face that alone." Sophie looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his expression that went beyond polite employer concern. He understood. He knew exactly what she was walking into because he had walked into something similar himself. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." 2 hours later, Sophie stood outside the apartment building where she had lived for 2 years. Her hands were shaking as she held her key, and her stomach churned with dread. Vincent had parked his black Range Rover on the street, and Lily was safely buckled in the back seat with a tablet playing her favorite show. "Do you want me to come up with you?" Vincent asked. Sophie shook her head. "I need to do this myself, but could you wait here, just in case?" I'm not going anywhere. The apartment was on the 4th floor. Sophie's legs felt like lead as she climbed the stairs, each step bringing her closer to a place that used to feel like home and now felt like a crime scene. When she reached the door, she paused, her key hovering over the lock. She could hear voices inside. Her blood ran cold. Nathan wasn't supposed to be here. He always spent Saturday mornings at the gym after his run, then grabbed brunch with his colleagues. But there he was, his laugh carrying through the door, and with him was another voice, female, light and musical. Sophie's hand trembled as she unlocked the door and pushed it open. The scene before her was like something from a nightmare. Nathan stood in the kitchen where Sophie had made countless dinners, wearing his favorite gray t-shirt. Beside him, draped in what was clearly his robe, was a woman Sophie had never seen before. She was beautiful, with long auburn hair and perfect skin, laughing at something Nathan had just said. They both froze when they saw Sophie. "Sophie," Nathan said, his face going pale. "You weren't supposed to come until later." "Clearly," Sophie said, her voice surprisingly steady, despite the fact that her entire body was shaking. "I'm here to get my things." The other woman looked uncomfortable, clutching the robe tighter around herself. "I should go." "No," Sophie said firmly. "You stay. I'll only be a few minutes." She walked past them toward the bedroom, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Not here, not in front of them. Behind her, she could hear Nathan following. "Sophie, listen, I know this looks bad." She spun around, her carefully controlled composure finally cracking. "Looks bad? Nathan, you broke off our engagement 4 days before our wedding, and now you have another woman wearing your robe in our apartment. What part of this doesn't look bad? You deserve an explanation." "I don't want your explanations," Sophie said, her voice rising. "I want my things, and then I want to never see you again." She grabbed her suitcase from the closet and started throwing clothes into it, not caring about folding anything neatly. Her hands moved automatically, pulling dresses from hangers, sweeping makeup from the bathroom counter, grabbing books from the nightstand. Nathan stood in the doorway watching her with something that might have been guilt. "I never meant to hurt you." Sophie laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. "You proposed to me. You planned a wedding with me. You let me believe we were building a future together. And then you met someone else and decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore. How exactly did you think that wouldn't hurt?" "It just happened. I didn't plan for any of this." "That doesn't make it better," Sophie said, zipping her suitcase with more force than necessary. "That just makes you weak." She grabbed another bag and started filling it with the rest of her belongings, her jewelry box, her favorite coffee mug, the framed photo of her parents. Each item was a reminder.
The following morning arrived with gentle spring rain tapping against the penthouse windows. Sophie woke to the sound and lay still for a moment, listening to the rhythm of water against glass. It had been 5 weeks since her world had fallen apart, 5 weeks since she had moved into Vincent's guest room, and somewhere along the way, something unexpected had happened. She had started to feel happy again. Not the desperate, clinging happiness of someone trying to convince themselves everything was fine. Real happiness, the quiet kind that settled into your bones and made you grateful for small moments. Morning coffee with Vincent while Lily ate her cereal, the way he remembered she liked extra cream, the sound of his laugh when she made a terrible joke, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her across the dinner table. Sophie got dressed and made her way to the kitchen, where she found Vincent already awake, standing by the window with his coffee, watching the rain. He turned when he heard her approach, and his face lit up with a smile that made her stomach flip. "Good morning," he said. "I made your coffee already. Extra cream." "You're gonna spoil me," Sophie said, accepting the mug he offered. "That's the plan." The words hung in the air between them, heavier than they should have been. Sophie felt her cheeks warm as Vincent held her gaze for a beat too long before turning back to the window. "Lily still asleep?" Sophie asked, needing to break the tension. "Out cold. She had nightmares last night, so she climbed into my bed around 3. I think she finally fell back asleep around 5. "Poor thing. Was she scared?" Vincent nodded, his expression softening the way it always did when he talked about his daughter. "She dreamed that you left and didn't come back. She was crying, asking me to promise you would stay." Sophie's heart clenched. "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that you're here right now, and that's what matters." Vincent paused, then added quietly, but I understand why she's worried. Good things don't usually last in her experience. Her mother left without warning. She's learned that people disappear. I would never do that to her, Sophie said fiercely. Even when I find my own place, I'll still be her nanny. I'll still see her every day. I know, Vincent said, but there was something sad in his voice. But it won't be the same, will it? She won't wake up and find you here. She won't have you at bedtime. Before Sophie could respond, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. Nathan, again. He had been calling and texting for weeks, but this time was different. This time, the preview of his message made her hand shake. Sophie, please, I made a terrible mistake. She meant nothing. I want you back. The wedding can still happen. We can fix this. Vincent must have seen her expression change because he was beside her in an instant. What's wrong? Sophie handed him the phone wordlessly. He read the message and his jaw tightened. He's been sending these? For weeks, I've been ignoring them. What do you want to do? Sophie took a deep breath. I want to block his number and never think about him again, but part of me thinks I should at least meet with him. Get closure, you know? Make sure he understands it's really over. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. Do you still love him? The question was direct, almost vulnerable, and Sophie realized with sudden clarity how much her answer mattered to him. No, she said honestly. I don't think I ever really loved him, not the way I should have. I loved the idea of him, the future we were supposed to have, but the actual person? I'm not sure I ever really knew him. Something in Vincent's posture relaxed. Then you don't owe him closure. You don't owe him anything. Maybe not, Sophie agreed, but I need it for myself. I need to look him in the eye and tell him that he doesn't get to decide he made a mistake and have me come running back. I need him to understand that some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Vincent nodded slowly. Then I'll come with you. Vincent, you don't have to. I want to, he said firmly. You were there for me when I needed someone, even if you didn't know it. Let me be there for you now. 2 days later, Sophie sat across from Nathan in a quiet coffee shop downtown. Vincent was at a table near the window, far enough away to give them privacy, but close enough that Sophie could see him if she needed the reminder that she wasn't alone. Nathan looked different somehow, smaller, less sure of himself. His perfect hair was slightly messy, and there were shadows under his eyes. Thank you for meeting me, he said, reaching across the table as if to take her hand. Sophie pulled back. What do you want, Nathan? I want to apologize, really apologize. What I did was unforgivable, but I'm hoping you can forgive me anyway. He tried for a charming smile, the one that used to make her melt. I was an idiot. I got scared about the commitment, about the wedding, and I panicked. But it's over with her. It was a mistake, Sophie. You're the one I want. Sophie stared at him, waiting to feel something. Anger, hurt, even satisfaction at seeing him grovel. But all she felt was a strange sense of detachment, like she was watching a movie about someone else's life. Do you know what the worst part was? Sophie said quietly. It wasn't that you cheated. It wasn't even that you called off the wedding. It was that you made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I had failed at being what you needed. You didn't fail at anything, Nathan said quickly. I was the one who messed up. You're right, you did, but that's not what I'm saying. Sophie leaned forward, her voice steady and clear. You made me question myself, doubt my worth, wonder what I did wrong. And it took me weeks to realize that I didn't do anything wrong. You did. You're the one who gave up, who took the easy way out, who hurt someone who loved you. I know, and I want to make it right. You can't, Sophie said simply, because I don't want you to. I don't want you anymore, Nathan. I thought I would be devastated forever, that I would never get over losing you. But the truth is, I'm better off without you. Nathan's face fell. You don't mean that. I absolutely do. You know what I learned these past few weeks? I learned what it feels like when someone actually cares about you, when someone sees you at your worst and doesn't run away, when someone makes you coffee the way you like it without being asked, when someone looks at you like you matter. I can be that person, Nathan said desperately. Give me another chance. Sophie shook her head.